Today we're going to be talking about how to make your own alternative book covers. Example, also example. I've made a video like this before, but it's been a while, and also this one's going to be a little more specific to paperback books. The process is very similar, but there's like a couple small differences because it doesn't always work to just shrink down an image that works for a hardcover. So we're going to be covering all of that. You are going to need access to Canva. You should be able to do everything we're going to do today on the free version of Canva. And of course, if you want to print it, you're going to need some method of printing. I'm going to show you an online printer that I've used, but you can definitely take these into an actual physical print shop and they can help you out. There is just one caveat, and that is having the titles on the covers. Very hit or miss. I've been turned away and had someone who just didn't care. So it depends on who's working at the print shop that day, what their specific policies are, because book titles are copyrighted and the print shop can get in trouble for printing that title if you don't have the rights or licensing to it. So I wanted to get that out of the way before I forgot, because I know that it's tempting to put the title on there, and if you're printing from home and it's just for you, like, go ahead and try it. All of the sets that I have do not have the titles on them. For example, this is Twilight, and there's no actual mention of Twilight on it, if that makes sense. This is the hardcover version, and it has all 4 books plus The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner, a stand-in book for Life and Death, because that 10-year anniversary book came out and I don't have the physical version of it, but we have a little Cassandra Clare standing in, and then also this is Midnight Sun. But for the paperbacks, we're only going to do the 4. I think it makes more sense for what most people would have, because this set that we're going to make together is going to go on my website. But the process I'm going to show you will work with anything. I've even done it with like a wedding picture before, so make sure you have a high resolution image that you want ready to go, and let's get to it. Welcome to my computer. It's a different day because I was exhausted, but let's get into it. So when you're in Canva, you're going to want to go to create and to pick a custom size. I like 18.5 width inches. If you want longer flaps, go ahead and do 22, but just keep in mind that the bigger the print, normally the more expensive it is. We're going with 18.5, and because we are covering the paperbacks of Twilight, they are 8.25 inches tall. If you are using the American editions, please keep in mind that for some reason, every country has their own heights. I don't understand. And so here we have our canvas. Whatever picture you've chosen, you'll put it in this upload section. And you're gonna wanna make it basically just tall enough, unless you have a picture that you don't like the top, like you want to crop the top of it off or something. But overall, I find that it works best to make it just as tall as the canvas and then center it. So this is our Edward and Bella, created by a really talented artist friend of mine. Thank you, Kelsey. And so once we have this taking up the full space and centered, you'll go to Elements and add a rectangle. So this is going to be our first spine. So in the past, when I've made more general sets, like sets that you could use for pretty much any series or something like that, I would do just like a median sort of width. Hardcover fantasy books, 1.8 inches to 2 inches works really well. If you're covering a bunch of maybe contemporary books or something like that, you might want to go a little bit smaller. Since this is for a specific series, I went ahead and measured the individual spines of my paperback version of Twilight. So that would make our first spine 1.35 inches wide. So the easiest way is to go to position and change it to 1.35 and then make the height our 8.25 measurement, enter. And now we have a spine that perfectly mimics the book we're going to be covering. Because we kind of want to see the design through it, we'll turn the transparency down a bit. We still want to see the spine, but we kind of want to see where in the design it's going. And so we repeat. Book 2 is 1.5 inches wide, if you happen to be following along for a Twilight set. Book 3 is 1.6, and Breaking Dawn is 1.9. So this is why it's important for us to have the transparencies. Hopefully on the computer screen you can kind of see it, but when you hover over, you can see where each of the individual spines is. So right now you can see that like we're getting not fully centered here, and even if the design isn't perfectly centered, you want to make sure to line up your spines in a way that's going to show the main portion of the picture. So like obviously we wouldn't want it over here because then Bella's face is barely on there. So I'm going to put it right about here. If you're in a pinch and you need a little more space, like say this part of the design was really important, you could kind of scooch these out just a little bit and leave this tiny bit of space between the spines. It's not going to destroy the image unless you're like super, super detailed about it. Like if I printed it like this, it could distort the face a little bit, but not so much that it would be a huge problem. But since we have the space, I would keep them flush against one another. This is where we avoid doing any and all math or measurements. You'll go to a new canvas, go ahead and get a line out and turn it to red, just to make it easier to see, in my opinion. You'll see this line appear that's telling you it's right in the middle, and we want it perfectly centered like this. And then we're going to take our first one and then press Shift so that you can get the back image too. Control C for copy, Control V for paste, right click, and go send to back. Now we can see our line and see it's perfectly centered. And then we're going to take both our back image and the spine and line it up right in the center where that red line is. So when we select this, we can see it's maybe a tiny bit off. So we'll select it again, and I'm just going to scooch it over right there and make sure it gets as centered as I can get it. So see, it's like pretty much spot on, perfectly centered. And now you can see we have this extra space here. If you want to, you can leave it. It's going to be in the flap, no one's going to see it, but that bothers me. So I'm going to copy and paste it and then flip it horizontal and just move it over here and overlap it a tiny bit so there's no white space. And so it's just going to kind of create this kind of continual pattern. It's not seamless, but in my opinion, it looks better than just leaving it white. And so we'll repeat that whole process. Go ahead and copy your line and put it down here. It should line up perfectly in the center the way it was here. And we'll grab our second spine and the image, send it to the back, and align it right on the center as best we can. So you can see that that's pretty dang close. Sometimes it'll kind of catch. Normally getting it pretty close works well. So don't worry too much about it if you're having a hard time getting it like perfect. And then again, I'm gonna go ahead and flip this horizontally to cover up this little white space over here. And we'll just repeat this for books 3 and 4. All right, so we now have all 4 of them, and like you can see, this green space is going to be the spine, and it kind of cuts off right at her nose, and then this is going to be the next one. So you can kind of see like the vision of what we're going for here. At this point, if you want to try to put titles on it, just keep in mind what I said about them maybe not getting printed. You might want a second alternative version. I personally like Roman numerals. You need something, I would at least highly recommend it, some sort of watermark, a number, something here, so that it's easier when you get these prints. They're going to be flat, and you want to be able to line up perfectly with the center of the spine. So if there's nothing on the actual cover to tell you where that center point is, it can be really hard to kind of get your book perfectly centered. So for me, that's why I like to have my personal Katsby watermark on there and then the Roman numeral right above it. And it's easy enough to go ahead and just add that to every book. I really like Canva because it just kind of like, it snaps to where it's supposed to be, sort of. If you've never used Canva before, you'll feel it when you try. But just Control Copy, Control Paste, and a lot of the times, as long as you're like fully on the next artboard, it'll just put it exactly where it was on the previous one, which is super helpful. And you can see it's pretty much perfectly aligned. Yes, it's tiny bit to the side, but that's just kind of how the software works, at least in my experience. If you're a Canva expert, feel free to give us some tips in the comments. But now we have books 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then on these, I don't like to completely delete this in case I want to come back to it. Feel free to delete, but I'm just going to turn the transparency all the way down. And now you can see exactly what it's going to look like when it's printed. All right, there's our covers. Oh, something to look out for. If you have something like this, as I do, it's completely hidden in the white text here, and so I like to turn that to just a complementary color that works with the rest of the stuff. Just something to keep in mind if you kind of can't see one of your watermarks or numbers. From here, we don't need to save this really. You could delete it if you want to, but again, if I want to come back to this, I'm gonna need this. So let's start with page 2, and you would just share, download, current page. I usually don't mess with these settings. I found that, you know, the standards do pretty well. So then we would download it, and it's going to save this image to our computer, and then we'll repeat with the rest of the pages. If you're feeling fancy, you can always individually name these files. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to show you what I think is easiest. You can always take this to a local print shop, but recently I've been using Luma Prints. I find it to be pretty high quality prints and also pretty good pricing. Overall, their ink quality and print quality is better than what I can do even with my big printer here at my house, and so I kind of opt for their option. If you want to do here, you would click to drag and upload an image. Upload it from your downloads folder, and then what I like the best and what tends to be a pretty cost-effective option is the fine art paper and this archival mat. I've tried a couple other ones. I do like this velvet feeling. All of them are pretty nice. I personally wouldn't go for the glossy stuff because it doesn't really feel like a book cover, and if you fold it around the book, it kind of gets a weird dent in it. But this one's my favorite, is archival mat. This is what makes this site so nice, is you can pick a custom size. A lot of places don't have that, or if they do, it's extremely expensive. And so by putting in our custom size here, which is 18.5 times 8.25, and then we're gonna go no bleed. We want it to go all the way out to the edge of the paper, because if we have to cut it down, it's not gonna fit the book. And so you want this no bleed option, and they're gonna cut it to size for us, which is beautiful because using a rotary cutter is super fun, but if you're even a tiny bit off, it's so frustrating. So it's really nice that it does all that for us. It's gonna give you this warning because if you don't have any space to bleed, there is a tiny chance, like a little bit's gonna get cut off. I have not had that experience with them though. And then we'll add it to our cart, and then we'll do add order item to do this process with each of the 4 covers. Okay, so this is what our cart looks like. We can see that all of them are horizontal, no bleed, and the measurements right here. Kind of give it a quick once over to make sure you didn't do anything double, so we can see that each time they're slightly shifted, which is what we're looking for. I'm gonna go ahead and check out. Love you guys, but not enough to give you my credit card information. So I will see you once they arrive and we wrap up our books. So there's gonna be a part 2 to this video. So the book covers will probably be here in a couple days. That's usually like how long it takes for me to get them from Luma Prints, which is the site that we were just on. And once those are here, I'll record the part of how to fold them so we can see the finished product. If you are going to print them yourself, if you happen to have a printer large enough, I would choose a heavy cardstock, like an 80-pound cardstock, and then make sure you're printing on the highest quality setting. Or if you're going to a local shop, they'll probably put the file on a larger piece of paper and you'll have to slice it down with their rotary slicer at the store. Just let them know that you don't want the actual size of the file to change, because sometimes they'll either shrink it down to the page size or they'll fit it to the page size, and if it's any other dimensions than what you have in the actual file, it's not going to fit the book. So make sure they understand what you're doing there. But I will hand it over to next week, Katelyn. We're back. Over the weekend, I was making some product photos for the website, and that did require me doing the regular print and cut everything myself style, because I didn't want to wait for a bunch of book covers to come in. And let me tell you, it's so much easier to have somebody else print this. And look at the color. Beautiful. So now we wrap our paperbacks. All right, I'm gonna do my best to show you this, but you might be getting papery sound ASMR happening here. So for our first book, we grab the first cover. It's similar to wrapping a hardcover, how you want the watermark lined up with the spine. So once it's in the middle, you'll just press down and flip it on its side. You want to kind of tuck the book in a little bit, press it so that it kind of fills to the edge of the jacket, and then once you get here, you just press down and make a nice long crease, and then you can lift it up and fold it in. At that point, we'll just tuck in this little cover flap right at the fold, flip the book over, and then do the same thing where we'll press down on the cover to make a dent. Lift up the flap and fold on that creased edge and tuck the cover in. And we have our first book covered. And so we'll repeat this process with the rest of the covers. Stand up the book, line the center of the watermark up with the spine and press around it. Try to get the paper flush with the spine. It's going to bow out a little bit. Trying to get it as close as you can. Make the crease, fold in the cheese, and there we have the skin of a killer, Bella. Something that can make it a little bit easier is to hold the book, press down once it's lined up, and sort of push into it while you're folding the cover around. Folding for paperbacks is definitely harder than hardcovers. However, so if you do the way that I do where it's like gets delivered kind of rolled up, you can lay them under really heavy books for a little while and that'll help flatten it out, and that definitely makes the folding process a little bit easier, but I'm impatient. So I didn't love the alignment of the face, so this is where the original crease was, and I moved it out just a tiny bit so that more of her face will end up on the spine. I'm gonna scooch in right there. I feel like they're siblings. Younger child, older child. If you have questions about making your own, please let me know in the comments. Please like this video if you liked it, click subscribe if you want to talk about more book stuff. My name's Katelyn, thanks for watching. Bye.